In the bustling city of Chicago, a man named Daniel Foster sat quietly at his favorite coffee shop, sipping a black coffee as he stared out the window. Daniel was in his mid-30s, well-groomed, hard-working, and someone who had dedicated most of his adult life to building a stable career. From the outside looking in, he appeared to have it all together. He had a comfortable apartment, a solid group of friends, and a respectable career as a financial analyst. Yet, beneath the calm surface, Daniel carried a weight on his shoulders that so many modern men were starting to feel. He wasn't bitter. He wasn't angry. But Daniel had slowly begun to question whether dating and relationships in the modern world were worth the emotional effort. He wasn't alone in this feeling. Across America, from New York to Los Angeles, from Dallas to Seattle, more and more men were quietly stepping back from the dating scene. It wasn't because they hated women or didn't believe in love. It was because they had experienced the harsh reality of modern dating, and many of them found it exhausting, confusing, and unrewarding. Daniel had grown up in a traditional household. His parents, Robert and Susan, had been married for nearly 40 years. They didn't have a perfect marriage, but they stuck together through ups and downs, making sacrifices along the way. Daniel grew up believing that love required work, compromise, and mutual respect. He assumed that when he reached adulthood, he would eventually find someone with similar values, settle down, and start a family of his own. But by the time Daniel reached his 30s, the dating world looked nothing like what his parents had described. Instead of simple introductions at church gatherings, family events, or through mutual friends, everything had shifted online. Apps like Tinder, Bumble, and Hinge became the primary way people met. At first, Daniel thought it was exciting. He could meet new people with just a swipe. Yet over time, the excitement wore off and reality set in. He realized that on these apps, appearances often mattered more than character. Conversations rarely went deeper than small talk, and ghosting became so common that he almost expected it. After countless first dates that never led anywhere, Daniel began to feel that modern dating was more like a revolving door than a path to meaningful connection. Daniel wasn't the only one feeling this way. His close friend, Marcus, a teacher in Denver, had similar experiences. Marcus had been burned by several relationships where he felt unappreciated despite giving his best. "Man," Marcus said during one of their phone calls, "I feel like we're putting in all the effort, but no one values it. If we don't play some kind of game, we get walked over. And if we do play the game, we feel fake. Where's the middle ground?" That was the question so many men were asking themselves. The harsh truth wasn't that men no longer wanted love. It was that love had become harder to find in a culture that often celebrated short-term excitement over long-term commitment. Daniel reflected on his most recent dating experience with a woman named Jessica from Boston. Jessica was smart, ambitious, and fun to be around. At first, Daniel thought she might be the one. But as weeks turned into months, he noticed that her priorities seemed different. She often talked about her options and how she was keeping her choices open. It became clear to Daniel that she wasn't looking for the same type of relationship he was. When the relationship ended, Daniel didn't feel anger, just a deep sense of clarity. He realized that many people were entering the dating scene without knowing what they truly wanted. Some wanted attention. Some wanted validation. Others wanted experiences but not responsibility. And in that environment, men like Daniel, who were ready to build something lasting, felt out of place. In Los Angeles, another man named Chris faced similar frustrations. Chris was a small business owner who had worked tirelessly to build his brand. He had financial stability and a good reputation, yet he constantly felt judged not for who he was but for what he could provide. He shared with Daniel one evening, "It's not about whether you're kind, loyal, or respectful anymore. It feels like you're being measured by material things, your car, your income, your lifestyle. And if you don't meet someone's checklist, you're dismissed instantly." Chris wasn't exaggerating. A growing number of men were noticing that modern dating often came with unspoken checklists: financial status, social status, looks, and lifestyle. While expectations weren't wrong in themselves, many men felt that relationships had turned transactional rather than emotional. This isn't to say that women didn't have their own struggles in dating. Many did. But the reality for men was that they often felt invisible unless they stood out in a crowd. For men who simply wanted a genuine connection, the constant competition was exhausting. Daniel and his friends began having long discussions about what it really meant to step away from dating. Were they giving up? Or were they protecting their peace? More and more, they leaned toward the second option. Stepping back wasn't about bitterness. It was about choosing not to invest time and energy in something that wasn't serving them. Instead, Daniel began focusing on himself. He picked up hobbies he had neglected, such as hiking in the Rockies and learning guitar. He strengthened his friendships, invested in his health, and spent more time with his family. The surprising thing, he felt happier and more fulfilled. And Daniel wasn't an outlier. Across the country, many men were reaching the same conclusion. They weren't walking away from women. They were walking away from a dating culture that felt broken. They were walking away from confusion, mixed signals, and games. They were choosing to build their lives in a way that brought them joy, with or without a partner. The harsh truth, then, was simple. Men weren't giving up on love. They were refusing to settle for a version of love that didn't feel real. They were saying no to a system that left them drained. And in that choice, they were rediscovering who they truly were. Daniel didn't know what the future held. Maybe one day he would meet someone who shared his values and dreams. But until then, he wasn't chasing something that didn't exist. He wasn't playing games. He wasn't trying to win validation. He was simply living his life with purpose and peace. And perhaps that was the real truth about why men were walking away from dating. Not out of anger, not out of bitterness, but out of a desire for authenticity. A desire to live life fully without waiting for someone else to complete it. Because in the end, Daniel realized that the best relationship a man can have is the one he builds with himself, his growth, his peace, and his integrity. And that's something no broken dating culture can ever take away.